On today's special edition of Healthy Connections, we're exploring groundbreaking clinical research happening right in our own backyard at the UCF College of Medicine. From understanding pneumococcal diseases that affect respiratory health to cutting-edge stories on lupus and breast cancers, our focus today is on the crucial role that clinical research plays in developing new treatments and improving patient outcomes. We'll hear from leading experts who are at the forefront of this research, discovering how these studies not only enhance our understanding of these serious conditions, but also pave the way for innovative therapies. Join us as we uncover the science behind these important health issues, the state-of-the-art trials being conducted, and how they can impact lives in our own community and beyond. Hello and welcome to Healthy Connections. I'm Annetta Wilson, your host. Healthy Connections is a show dedicated to exploring a wide variety of topics, from prenatal care to Alzheimer's disease. And we do so with a wide variety of perspectives, from the professionals that help treat the syndromes to everyday people like you and me who may have personal experience dealing with these topics on a first-hand basis. Stay tuned for Healthy Connections.
Welcome to the University of Central Florida College of Medicine. We are located in Lake Nona, which is considered the medical city of Orlando. We are at 6900 Lake Nona Boulevard, and we are starting up our clinical research and clinical trials department and growing to welcome the community to participate. So if you've ever been the beneficiary of any sort of medication, if it's topical medication or painkillers, you've benefited from a clinical trial. A clinical trial or a clinical research study is research to investigate and see if a drug works. And this is done prior to the FDA allowing the drug to be on the market. These can be topical drugs, these can be ingestible drugs, anything that you've used for treatment of a disease, and sometimes for diagnosis. We have the FDA devices or other things that are for the diagnosis of disease. Participating in clinical trials helps everyone to learn more about medicine. By participating in the trial, you are helping to perhaps provide greater knowledge and improving how medicine or how the disease is treated. So we're always working to find what is a better way to diagnose a disease, or what is the better way to treat the disease. And then sometimes what are for special populations, like for children, a treatment that works for adults doesn't work for children. So by volunteering, you would be helping to advance that research so that we can better treat the diseases in the community. For each study in each clinical trial, there are specific requirements, and this is for the safety of the participant. So there may be requirements for age. We do have a lot of dementia-related studies, or there may be requirements for certain things with your health, so that we are not in any way worsening your health. So each study comes with very specific criteria, sometimes like 20 different criteria, that if you reach out to us, we'll go through the criteria to make sure you're a good fit. Other studies are simpler, and we just need, normal, healthy people to volunteer, because we're asking you to be a comparator for what is happening with people with the disease. So the best way, if you see on our website or anywhere else that we have a study and you're interested, reach out and we will go through the criteria with you to make sure it's safe and that you're also otherwise eligible to participate in the trial. We're at College of Medicine strive to publish our results, so we do it at academic and scientific conferences and professional conferences. We also present at academic conferences and publish in journals, academic journals. But also, if you are part of our trials, you can ask, not for your specific results, but just to say, how is this trial going? What have you guys found? You can ask us, and if you give us consent, we'll let you know when we publish and what the findings are. keeping in mind copyright laws. So we may not be able to send you the actual publication, but we'll inform you that, thank you for participating, and we have found this, and ask you, share it with you and ask you for your feedback if that's it. But when you participate in a clinical trial, you should not expect to get your specific results. Everything is investigation, it's research time. It's unethical for us to provide those results for you to then use it to determine your diagnosis or your treatment, right? Because sometimes it is not at that phase. We do have trials that are phase 4 trials, or what they're called, where we can, because that medication is on the market. There are different phases to trials. But for the earlier phase ones, it would be irresponsible because it might be misleading for you. The University of Central Florida College of Medicine is very excited to be offering many clinical research studies as well as interventional drug trials. So we have studies on pneumonia, on lupus. We have cardiology-related studies for heart disease. We have studies on breast cancer and colorectal cancer. We have several opportunities. At any point, we have several clinical research studies and trials that are operating. If you're interested, just reach out. We'd be so excited to welcome you and see how you match up with our clinical trials.
So here in my lab at the University of Central Florida, we investigate a variety of infectious diseases using different types of genomic techniques. And what that involves is taking the viruses and bacteria and characterizing their genomes. And what I like to say is we make family trees of these pathogens to understand how they spread and transmit in the community and in different settings. So in the past, we've worked with a bacteria called Staphylococcus aureus. It causes skin infections and other types of severe diseases. That one used to be called the superbug because of its ability to gain antibiotic resistance. Of course, nowadays we're seeing a lot of other bacteria able to have resistance to a lot of different antibiotics. We also have investigated a lot of different emerging viruses, such as Zika virus. Most recently, we were involved with the state and national response to the COVID-19 pandemic. That involved partnering with our local county health department, the Florida Department of Health, to provide genome sequences of SARS-CoV-2 isolates that were collected around Orange County and the Central Florida area. And so that in entirety contributed to our public health response to track the different variants that were emerging and transitions from different types and stages of the pandemic. Currently, we're doing 2 studies on pneumococcal disease, and that is a condition caused by the bacteria Streptococcus pneumonia. It's a vaccine-preventable disease that mostly affects children less than 5 years old and older adults with underlying risk factors. It can cause a variety of different diseases, most commonly in kids. It causes ear infections. If you're a parent with a kid that has had chronic ear infections, that's one of the bacteria that can cause that. It can also cause severe disease and unfortunately cause death in some instances in young children who are unvaccinated. And in adults, it can cause blood infections, it can cause pneumonia. So we're really interested in investigating this bacteria, Streptococcus pneumonia, and are doing so in these different studies. I think currently with any type of study in the biomedical area, participant recruitment is sometimes the most difficult component of it. Coming out of the pandemic, there's certainly a lot of exhaustion with having swabs collected and seeing and having healthcare contact. So having somebody agree to participate and to submit a swab and to go through that process is kind of a hard sell sometimes. And we try to make the benefits of the study known to the participants and showing them how their data are going to be used, why it's important to do these types of studies, and of course they have some form of payment for participating. But in general, that oftentimes is the most difficult thing, is getting participants that fit our criteria for enrolling in the studies, and then also making sure that those participants span kind of the racial, ethnic, demographic components that characterize our community. You want to be able to have a representative sample of the population for these types of studies. Right now, we're currently enrolling participants. that are either young children, less than 5, or older adults. And what we're interested in doing is understanding what types of the bacteria they're carrying. So we're taking a swab of their nasopharynx, which was kind of the one during the pandemic that most people kind of cringed the most, all the way back in the nares, and then using that to identify whether they're carrying this bacteria. And now this bacteria can be carried by a person and not cause any problems, and that's oftentimes how it spreads, and then for certain reasons when it is acquired by somebody with possibly underlying medical conditions, they get severely ill. So what we want to do is we want to be able to screen a large number of people in those different age categories and understand whether they're carriers of the bacteria. And then once we do, we ask them a series of questions, and then we're able to identify what the risk factors are for that type of, for carrying that bacteria. Once we are taking those bacteria that we collect, and then we subject them to a variety of our sequencing techniques, and we use that to further characterize the types of strains that they're collecting. This is a vaccine-preventable disease. The vaccine only covers a small proportion of the number of bacteria, of this type of bacteria. So think about the flu vaccine. Every year the flu virus changes a little bit, and you kind of have to keep ahead of which ones are circulating, and the vaccine's tailored every year to this. With this particular bacteria, Streptococcus pneumonia, there's over 100 different types. The vaccine protects against somewhere between 15 to 22 of them. And what's important about this study is we're looking to see which of those types are spreading in the community. And those information, those data will go back and assist in developing better vaccines that cover against more of the types that are causing disease and protecting a greater number of individuals. I'll just say more broadly, we're really interested in this area of vaccine preventable diseases. Certainly there's been a large shift after the pandemic where we've seen a lot of vaccine hesitancy. For example, before the pandemic, the immunization rates for kids less than 18 for influenza was about 60% or 63% every year. Now we're hovering around 40%. And as a result, we've seen a resurgence in a lot of these vaccine preventable diseases. This time of year, I think everybody's known somebody that's had the flu, and that's a direct result of kind of these dropping immunization rates. We also are facing pertussis outbreaks in parts of the country, which are also vaccine preventable diseases. So I think that what we really need to focus on, especially with research like this, is showing the safety of the vaccination as well as the importance of it to make sure that we can get those rates of immunization back up and prevent some of these diseases from resurging and causing a lot of morbidity and mortality.
We're working with the College of Medicine at UCF. They are consenting patients. They're breast cancer patients and then also normal people that are age matched. We are collecting blood samples, and then we are looking for a protein that should go up in cancer patients, and we're collecting all stages of patients, whether they've been newly diagnosed or whether they've undergone treatment. There's a questionnaire that we're asking in terms of their knowledge of their own circumstances. And then we're also asking for fasted or people that have not eaten overnight so that we can collect blood and then be able to see if there's a difference between normal levels and then the cancer patient levels. Okay. The patients themselves will have had the treatments. On the laboratory side of things, there's a whole nother component that we are interested in knowing about. And so we pick patients that are receiving standard of care treatments, and then we try to understand the protein that we're looking at has a way to actually block it. And so we have a compound, it's actually in clinical trials right now for liver cancer, and we're trying to combine that with some of the standard of care treatments for breast cancer. Okay. And what we're looking for, we take the blood, and then we isolate the clear portion of the blood. It's called the serum or plasma, and then we test that for the protein. There's a test that we have that's based on an antibody that recognizes that protein, and then that antibody is labeled with another substance that gives off a color. And so we look for color intensity that basically gives us an indication of how much protein is there. So far, everything's blinded right now. We've had a number of individuals that are in our control group. We're still recruiting patients that would be in the breast cancer group. So we haven't actually done any of the testing. We're waiting for the whole group to be accrued. This is part of a 3-year grant from the state of Florida. We're funded by the Florida Department of Health, Bankhead Coley Cancer Program. We're in our 2nd year, and so we have a whole nother year where we can work to collect more patient bloods, and then towards the end, that's when we're actually going to be running the real trial in terms of seeing whether there's differences between our control group and the patient group. This particular one is difficult because of the fasting component. But I know Dr. Frazier's group in the College of Medicine who does the consenting of the patients, and they also do the initial blood draws, and the lab actually gets informed when they have a sample, and we go pick it up and process it. But when their group is approaching different patients, the difficulty is actually in the fasting component. But she's willing to work with individuals that are interested in participating to figure out a way, to do this, to make it comfortable for them, whether it's coming to their homes. That's one of the things that she's tried in the past, or finding a time where it works for them to come in to the clinic to have the blood drawn. We are what you call preclinical, so we are on the discovery side of things. Where we would go with this would be the translational part of this, and actually the next piece that I would want to do is then once we know there's a subset of breast cancer patients that might have elevated levels of the protein, then we would want to do a different trial where we would collect stage 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4, for example, and then try to narrow in on if there's a certain subset of breast cancer patients where this is important. Okay. The trends are, there's a lot of good responses because there's a lot of screening available for breast cancer patients so they can catch it early. Our lab is actually in the other end of the spectrum, and we're interested in metastatic breast cancers. So this protein may be a way that the cancer cells can circumvent some of the treatment therapies that are currently out there, or as patients start to relapse, this might become more prevalent. So these are some of the things that we're looking at in the clinical trial in terms of needing all stages of breast cancer patients and then figuring out which subsets of patients actually have higher levels of the protein.
UCF Health, we're doing this clinical trial for disease named systemic lupus erythematosus. That's one of the very common disease in rheumatology that we see that involves multiple systems in the body. Currently we're doing this trial for the patients adult group who have moderate to severe disease. So that all sort of goes by certain criteria. We're looking for an investigational drug that we've been using in rheumatology for other purposes, but now we're looking to see that if that medication would help patients with lupus. So if there is any patient that is interested to be involved in the clinical trial, we'll be very happy to provide them more information about this medication and about the trial as well. There are so many different people with the diagnosis of systemic lupus erythematosus that have been seen by different rheumatologists. In our practice as well, I'm working along with 4 other wonderful rheumatologists here at UCF Health. We have these patients that we have
big research team that they do all these screening. They look at the patient charts to see that if they be qualified based on inclusion and exclusion criteria, and if they meet those criteria, they will offer them more information about the trial. So then they know about that, and if they decide to be part of this, then they enroll them into the study, and then after that the research team will take over from there. Lupus is a very systemic disease, and it involves multiple aspects of patient's life. So there are so many different types of medications that help with the diagnosis of lupus and with the signs and symptoms of it, but then this one we're hoping to get more improvement in their quality of life and also some symptom relief, because again this is a very systemic disease and involves multiple parts in the body. So then they will have multiple systems that affects eventually their quality of life. So by trying these medications, we're so hopeful to get some improvement in their quality of life and also in their symptoms of the disease. When we're conducting the clinical trials, one of the hardest part would be when we're looking to find the right patient for our child, because again there are so many different rheumatologists that they're seeing these patients, so then the exclusion and inclusion criteria are very tight, so then patients should fall into category of those. So then finding a good fit for the trial would be one of the biggest concern, and also the willingness of patients to be involved, because again there will be a lot of questions that they have, and then not all of those might be clearly answered to them by the team from their perspective. So then having them, because it's their life, so they need to know about those and need to make the right decision. So I guess finding the right candidate for the trial would be one of the hardest ones. There have been some newly invented medications that they have been approved by FDA for lupus, different types of disease activity. There's like mild disease activity, moderate disease activity, severe disease activity, and then also again back to the nature of the disease, it will affect multiple organs in the body. So then for lupus that can involve the kidneys, there have been some new invented medication that are now FDA approved. But this one works differently, and then it impacts patient in a different way. So this is what we're looking to find out, that if this medication will make a meaningful changes in their disease course.
On pneumococcal disease, certainly recently we just had changes to our vaccine recommendations based on the new vaccines that were coming out by the manufacturers. And being able to take data that we're generating and use those to inform vaccine guidance, the development of new vaccines, is really highly important. And in addition to that, we're looking at things like antibiotic resistance, who's susceptible, that can inform treatment criteria. It can also identify individuals that are high risk for disease, and therefore we can give new guidance to be able to make sure that the people who are at the greatest risk are the ones that are getting vaccinated and protecting themselves and their family members.
We're also combining the therapeutic that's available to disrupt this connection between the protein and the receptor, and trying to understand if we can use that for some of these metastatic cancers to help find new therapies or new things that can be combined with the current therapies to increase effectiveness.
We do have some options that we can use to treat this condition, but it's very aggressive and it's very bothersome to a lot of patients with lupus. So we're hopeful that by finding a new medication, we can change and switch to a better lifestyle for the patients with less pain and less severe symptoms.
If you're interested in participating in clinical trials at University of Central Florida College of Medicine, you can contact us by phone at 407-COM-TRIALS, and that spells out to be 407-266-8742. And we will respond to you and let you know what we have available, and then we can discuss which trials you're a good match for.
It is always good news when we hear about advances in research, and it's even better news to know that research is being done at the University of Central Florida Medical School, right here in our own backyard, helping us have more healthy connections.